637 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Want to welcome on into the program Matthew Hurtt, our Grassroots political analyst. And Matthew, I'm looking up at CNN. Sources saying Joe Biden to attack Donald Trump. This is the crazy part. Joe Biden, of all people, is going to attack Donald Trump as unfit for office during the CNN debate tomorrow night. Your thoughts on that tactic?
You know, this is the contrast that Joe Biden is trying to draw in this election. He started the campaign talking about the threat to democracy and particularly to Donald Trump. And the polls recently have showed that that's not really catching on and that the campaign may abandon this. But this is their first of two head-to-head opportunities. There'll be millions of viewers. People will be tuning in. And this may be an effort for Joe Biden to try this line of attack one more time. But as we've seen in recent polls, I think we talked about in one of our last conversations, this really isn't taking off. And so it is sort of like that scene in Mean Girls where they say, you know, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. And it is to be determined. We'll see when folks tune in tomorrow night.
Do you think that gives the opportunity for Trump to then turn it back around on Biden and say, now, since we're talking about who is able to be in office, who has the mental capacity to be in office, let's talk about you, President Biden. And that does seem to open the door for President Trump to go after Biden for the same thing, not being fit for office.
This is an excellent question, Dan. I'm going to get just a little nerdy here. When communications and strategists, professionals get together on a campaign and plan out the messaging strategy, they use what's called the Leesburg grid, or the 4 boxes. And very quickly, it is, you know, what you're going to say about yourself, what you're going to say about your opponent in the top 2 boxes, and in the bottom 2, you have to anticipate what your opponent is going to say about you, and then what your opponent is going to say about himself. And it's a very honest process. You really have to dig in and say, what is my opponent going to say about me? What are my flaws? And this certainly opens the door for Donald Trump to talk about Joe Biden's mental agility, his ability to serve another 4 years. When you put them side by side, generally, Donald Trump appears more energetic, appears more focused, appears more ready to serve. And in instances outside of the State of the Union address earlier this year, Joe Biden does not stack up to Donald Trump's energy and enthusiasm and his coherence when he's on the campaign trail.
Now, Matthew Hurtt joining us, our Grassroots political analyst. And Matthew, there's some breaking news. I don't know, Johnny, Ken, I don't know if everyone has seen the breaking news, but on CNN right now, Adam Kinzinger, as a proud conservative, is endorsing Joe Biden for his reelection.
Well, that figures.
I fooled everybody, didn't I? Just admit it. I fooled you.
Yeah, you did.
I did. Not a shock in any way, shape, or form, Matthew.
You know, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are cut from the same cloth. Kinzinger was recently on Real Time with Bill Maher, and he couldn't stop laughing as Maher made jokes about Donald Trump. This is not a surprise. This is someone who's trying to carve out political relevancy. You know, he was thumped by voters. Republicans were going to reject him in his district, and this is just one effort to hang on to political relevancy. And in a cycle or in 18 months, people will say who when somebody mentions Adam Kinzinger.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to bounce around a little bit just because there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. But I want to play you this audio from Jamal Bowman last weekend. So big news out this morning. Jamal Bowman, the squad member, the first squad member to fall. And people are wondering if AOC is going to suffer the same fate. Now, Bowman lost to, you know, as I mentioned a while ago, an old white guy, which is what some people are saying. But the reality is that he ran on this ceasefire now policy, and he was just, I mean, he lost, and he lost big time. Do you think this is a sign that the squad may be falling out of favor with the Democrat Party?
It's hard to say in a specific district with some nuance at the district level. The last time you and I spoke, we talked about how Latimer was endorsed by Hillary Clinton, and we sort of discussed whether or not that was relevant. This is certainly a win for the non-squad faction of the Democratic Party. Yesterday, Jamal Bowman tweeted Rough Riders Anthem, which many of your listeners may not be familiar with, but it was a funny moment on Twitter. Just a few hours later, his political defeat, which some saw. Now, with Latimer, you have a politically credible figure in the district. He is a county executive or a county mayor, and so he has civic chops and political credibility. When you are challenging an incumbent who may seem unbeatable, who may nationalize his or her race and raise millions of dollars from special interest groups from their own wing of the party, you have to field somebody who is credible. So I look at, congressional races across Tennessee and my conservative friends who have wanted a primary entrenched incumbents or something like that. And frequently they field a candidate who just doesn't have that civic resume or that credibility. Latimer certainly had that. He spoke to the issues of his own political credibility, but then he drew contrast on the issues of the squad and in particular the Israel and Palestine conflict. And I think that resonated with New York voters. And that is what you have to have. You have to have a candidate who is credible. And then frequently you have a national issue that will galvanize and allow you to nationalize your campaign and drive a narrative.
On the phone with us is our Grassroots political analyst, Matthew Hurtt. Matthew, so we're talking about Jamal Bowman, one of the squad members, and I think as far as the squad members go, he has to be one of the dumbest. I'm just going to say that with the whole fire alarm thing. But AOC was right out there with him, and they had this big old, as people are saying, WWE-style rally over the weekend. She's running around, she's fist pumping, she's, dancing to the music, and the whole thing was just ridiculous. And of course, Bowman got his tail kicked. What happens to the other members of the squad? Do you see them also losing in their primary?
You mentioned funding around Israeli issues or the Israel-Palestine question. AIPAC played in northern Kentucky in a race with Congressman Thomas Massey, a principled libertarian, and he had an opponent who had previously run statewide before, and Thomas Massey absolutely trounced his opponent. AIPAC came in and spent, I think, $300,000 or $400,000. They ran ads not only in the district but statewide because they're afraid Massey is going to run for U.S. Senate or for statewide office. But in AOC's race, her primary race, she got 82.1% of the vote against a guy who doesn't appear at first blush to have been a credible candidate. Any of these, any member of Congress is vulnerable if a serious candidate arises from a civic group, from a political infrastructure, or from something else. But they have to have, the most important thing is they have to have political credibility to give voters an alternative. People want to know when they vote for a candidate, aside from all the issues, is what are you going to do for me or what have you done for the community, especially in urban communities in cities where there are a lot more government services and there are a lot more of that infrastructure. And so somebody who would defeat an AOC or Rashida Tlaib or anybody like that would have to come up through that civic infrastructure and say, look, this is what I've already been doing for you, and if you send me to Congress, I'll keep doing it. The AOC's primary win, it was 82.1% of the vote. She got 18,800 votes, and her opponent got 4,000. And that is, I don't even know who that guy is. Right. He didn't nationalize the race. That would have helped probably with fundraising. That's what nationalizing a race will do. But, aside from that, you have to have the credibility to run. A lot of conservatives, and I see it all the time, they want to do something. They want to save the country. They want to run for office, and they haven't done much in that space yet. And instead of running for state house or state senate, they decide to run for Congress or U.S. Senate, and it does not give voters a credible alternative to whomever the incumbent is.
648 Nashville's Morning News. Matthew Hurtt is joining us, our Grassroots political analyst. Matthew, let me ask you. So there's two big theories as to what Donald Trump is going to show up tomorrow night. I think the prevailing theory is that he's going to allow Joe Biden to speak that he learned from that first debate in 2020 with Joe Biden, putting the whole microphones are going to be turned off when the other is speaking part of it. Do you see Joe Biden and the moderators being able to bait or goad Trump into being angry? Because clearly they're going to try and tick him off. And it's Trump's responsibility not to take the bait.
This is the unknown variable. There is no studio audience. It is 90 minutes. In the 2 breaks, neither candidate gets to confer with their campaign staff, and they will cut the mics when it isn't your time to talk. If Donald Trump can respect and observe that, basically by looking at the last presidential debate cycle, this isn't the first time he's gone up against Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is arguably in a less, he's worse off mentally in a situation like this. If Donald Trump is able to respect a muted mic and use the camera effectively, he could look directly into the camera with no studio audience and make the case to the American people. That will be incredibly compelling to voters, not only Republicans, but independents and even those Democrats who say, I don't know if I can push the button for Joe Biden again.
It's interesting because J.D. Vance said basically the same thing, which is Trump just needs to be nice, because at the end of the day, most people who actually meet Donald Trump will tell you that he's a nice guy, that he's a good guy, that he cares about people and he cares about families. And Trump is, in my opinion, says the Trump supporter, far more in touch with the American people and where our families are these days than Joe Biden ever has been. And so I think that if Trump allows that part of his personality to shine through, and he looks at the camera, as you said, he looks at the camera and he talks about what he can do for America to make our lives better, I think that all of the attempts to anger Donald Trump, to bait Donald Trump, won't matter because he will come out shining in the end. All right, very good. What do you think? Yes or no on Joe Biden on some sort of a cocktail? Just give me like 30 seconds on that.
I think that Joe Biden will take whatever he took before the State of the Union address,
Yep.
and if he can keep that together, it will be a challenge. And Donald Trump is right to be frustrated about many things, the deep state. But if he can keep his cool, like you just said, I think he's got a tremendous opportunity to outshine and upstage Joe Biden.
Thank you, Matthew. Matthew Hurtt on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.